What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. It's Monday, so time to go over the top waiver wire ads for week 9, already approaching week 9. And as always, this video is recorded and uploaded before the Monday night game. So if you're watching this on Tuesday especially, and something big happened in tonight's game, I'll update the table on the website, but obviously I'm not a time traveler. We had far fewer injuries this week, which is fantastic. You love exiting a week where only a few guys suffer injuries, and I don't believe, at least off the top of my head, there were like major injuries. Like with the past few weeks, it's been unreal the amount of people who have been injured and had like long-term injuries. We seem to have escaped so far. Hopefully nothing happens tonight. We seem to have escaped week 8 relatively injury-free. Like obviously people get hurt every week, but you know, that's a positive. It does mean that on free agency, it's at least less likely. You look at free agency and you're like, oh, wow, you know, here's this week's Kenneth Walker. I'm spending 100% of my fab on them. Like, that's not really the case this week. But let's go over the top options if you need something. But at least it's positive that it's less likely you are entering next week like, oh my goodness, you know, my top 2 running backs got hurt. That probably didn't happen. So hopefully you need free agency a little bit less. But again, top options are names that were top options last week. And I would say in most competitive leagues, they're probably not available, but, you know, I have to mention them just in case they are. And that's Khalil Herbert and then the duo of Panthers running backs, Donta Foreman and Chuba Hubbard. Again, we've been over these players a ton, and they were at the top of the list last week. So, you know, again, we don't need to go that in depth on any of them. But for some reason, you know, Khalil Herbert is not rostered in like 90% of leagues, even though every week he's been getting more and more work. He has consistently looked better than David Montgomery. If he's available, obviously grab him. And then Foreman, Chuba, the 2 lead backs now with McCaffrey gone from the Panthers. Foreman went off last week with Chuba injured. But remember, Chuba was the lead back and the third down back when he was healthy in week 7. Then he gets hurt, and Foreman now takes over as effectively the feature back, but they're never really going to use him a ton in the receiving game. They don't get to play the Falcons every week. That's a dream matchup. They have a terrible, I would just say, defense overall. They can't really stop many people. Don't expect Foreman to have 103 touchdowns every week. That makes sense. Obviously, you expect that from no one. No one gets that every week. But especially like once the matchups are more difficult, once they're not in, you know, potentially like winning game scripts overall, they're going to be losing more games. They are going to be splitting between Chuba and Foreman. So understand that Foreman's not just like a locked in running back one rest of season. And they both should be rostered 90+% of the league. So Foreman right now, I think he's probably at like 70% in most because like people saw that Chuba was going to be out this last week. Obviously, that made Foreman more valuable towards the end of the week. And so people who didn't go after him early, maybe Thursday, Friday, Saturday, started picking him up. That didn't happen to Chuba. So Chuba's still available in like 70% of leagues. Again, if he's out there, he should still be rostered because he's going to be used when he's healthy. And it was a short-term injury. He's going to be back very soon. After those two, I would say tier break, very small tier break though, like just a little bit down. You've got Kadarius Toney and Kenyon Drake, both completely different value outlooks. Like you look at Drake, more of that short-term fill-in. You look at Toney, more of that like long-term option. But I would say overall value-wise, they're relatively similar. It really just depends on what you need. Like if you need running back now, well, don't take Toney, take Kenyon Drake. But Toney, you know, all else equal, given like a neutral team, no like severe needs, he's my preferred option because he's that longer term play and because he does have more upside. He is an incredibly explosive player. He's incredibly elusive. He really just needs the ball in his hands. Like he's not going to go out there. We kind of talked about this in the summer, right? Like he's not a player that goes out there, dominates the entire route tree, is a clear alpha that it's like, you know, just go out there, run some routes. You're going to consistently get open and I'll get you the ball when you're open. It's more get Toney a screen pass, get him working across the middle of the field. Like just get him the ball and he'll do something incredible with it afterwards. And so on a lot of teams, that's like useful and it'll come with spike tweaks, but not like all the time. On Kansas City, again, not all the time. He's not just like he's not Tyreek Hill, right? Like he's gonna have some down weeks. But if he can stay healthy in this offense, they don't have people who are being like, can't play Toney because we've got Marquez Valdes-Scantling or Hardman or Sky Moore that hasn't really produced so far this season. Even Juju. Like, Juju has not been that good in fantasy. He's had a few spiked weeks because he's gotten lucky on some like long plays, but Juju as a player has not been very good this season. So he's going to see the field. He's going to get the targets. And if he gets the targets in this offense, he's going to be really, really good. He has a ton of upside. Could be like a weekly wide receiver too. That's like more boom bust, but like the booms, my goodness, they could be really, really strong in this offense. Again, he's a very, very, very strong target. I think I spent 9% fab when it happened. So my league, or at least one of them, has like rolling waivers. We never have free agency, so every day it's waivers. I spent 9% and I got him last week. I would imagine that's roughly how much you'd have to spend this week. But again, you know your league better than I do. But yeah, him. And then I would just say, if you need this week, you're like, I have a player on bye and a player hurt, I need a running back this week. Dobbins on IR, Gus, I would say the estimate right now is like 1 to 2 weeks. We'll probably know more this week, but that's the kind of general estimate that he's going to miss with the hamstring injury. And so you've got Drake and Justice Hill probably splitting the work, with Drake more being that 1A, more the one you want in fantasy. Has looked good when he's gotten the touches in this offense. So if you need a fill-in, he would definitely be like a, not a clear must start this week, but if he's the lead back, he's going to be someone you might want to be starting. After those two, I think you get into like that tight end duo. Obviously, if you don't need tight end, just skip this part. Like if you have Travis Kelce coming back from bye now, you don't need to add R2 here, Dulcich and Hurst, right? Like you just don't have to do that. So skip the next part. But if you basically don't have Kelce, if you have someone else, we've talked about Dulcich for 3 to 4 consecutive weeks now. So if you needed an option, you probably already have him. But this last week, even stronger game, up to 80% of the snaps, caught 4 or 5 targets, 87 yards. I believe there was a touchdown that Wilson kind of missed him on as well. Could have had an even bigger game, but like any tight end posting numbers is viable in fantasy. And then Hayden Hurst plays tonight, so we'll see how he does. But obviously you have to know Chase potentially missing this next month. If you need tight end right now, well, the Chase targets aren't all going to Hayden Hurst. But if at least 1 to 2 of them do, he was already a fringe option. And so this will make him an even stronger option. After those 2 tight ends, I think you're getting into those running back handcuffs and then those high upside options. My list in order would be Rachaad White first, then Alexander Madison, then Isaiah Pacheco, then Kyron Williams, Jalen Warren, and then James Cook. That would kind of be they're not all the same. Some of them are more pure handcuffs. Some of them are splitting work now. One of them, Pacheco, is technically the starter. So they have different roles, but those are the running backs that I would want to be rostering on my bench because they have upside. That's the group where it's these are potential league winners if everything does go their way. I don't think all of them have the same upside. Some of them definitely Warren, if Najee got hurt, has really, really good upside. But I would say Madison probably has the most if Cook got hurt. Maybe if Fournette got hurt, Rachaad White would have a lot, but different levels of upside there. Pacheco, kind of alluded to before, was technically announced as the starter. So you're well, Nick, one of them's already the starter. It's yeah, and maybe post bye, we can look at Pacheco and say, he's announced as starter. Then they go on bye. Rookies after bye typically see a bump in playing time and production. So maybe he is going to get a lot of touches all of a sudden. But when Clyde was a starter, he was getting 9 to 10 touches a game, and we were only playing him because he was getting super lucky with touchdowns. Pacheco gets to start, he gets 8 carries, 0 targets. He has 2 targets on the entire season. Pacheco still needs someone to get hurt. He needs Jerick McKinnon to get hurt to get targets. He needs Clyde to get hurt to get more into those low teens for carries and even touchdowns, because they might still prefer Clyde at the goal line. We still have Pacheco fielding kickoff returns last week, or I guess the last time they played. And so it's he's not just locked in as this easy running back 2 every week. He still needs an injury. Kind of want to go over that there. And then I would say the one that's like exciting is Kyren Williams, because like all these guys need something to happen, right? Well, Kyren Williams like technically might just need to get healthy himself. Like we look at the Rams running back touches this last week, 12 for Ronnie Rivers, 6 for Henderson, 5 for Malcolm Brown. Like they're very clearly, and it's not like Ronnie Rivers was ever like, high-end prospect. He's not someone they want long-term. He didn't like explode or anything. Like they don't really know what they know what they want right now. And it's Kyren Williams. Like they don't want Akers. They don't want these running backs. They're just rotating guys. They don't have a clear one, but this is an offense that's used a clear one in the past. And so, especially with how McVay has been like hyping up Kyren Williams, he says he really, really likes him. Like if he comes back, and we don't know because he's a rookie, we don't know how he's going to look, but like he's got upside. And if they're going to give him a good snap share, give him targets, give him goal line work, like if he gets that sort of volume in this offense, he's going to be really good in fantasy. And in most leagues, people don't really know about him, and so he's free. If you're in a competitive league, people probably know. People have been stashing him on IR. But, and let's be honest, for many of you in like 10 and 12 team hometown leagues, many people have not even heard of this kid's name. And if he comes back soon, and then he has a good game, he's like the number one option. And waiver wire should probably stash him now, especially if you have an open IR spot. After that, I think you're looking at those like upside wide receivers that aren't pure flyers, but let's be honest, are not weekly starts. I would say the list is Rondale Moore, Romeo Doubs, Alec Pierce, and then Joshua Palmer. I don't completely buy into the Rondale Moore, like I guess quote unquote breakout game. Like he still had good production earlier in the season a few times, but this was the first game where he like really had a good game, 7 for 92 and a score. Still playing every snap, so that's the positive. Again, I don't fully buy that we're going to consistently see this every week. I thought that was going to happen, but then Hopkins returned and like Kyler just focused on him so much. Now that changed a little bit this week. They spread it around a little bit, but like Hopkins is still the clear alpha. And until I see Rondale Moore like multiple weeks really earning this target share, I'm not going to fully buy it. He played on like 77 snaps. Like, there's a lot of weeks where they're not going to run that many plays. And if the plays do come down, like maybe we do get a scenario where Hopkins is dominating the target share a little bit more. So an ad, I still think he should be rostered in a lot of leagues. I think I'm going to bump him up in the rest of season rankings this week. But understand that it's still like, we know his role and it's not dominant. It's still more of that like flex play. After that, you guys all know like the Romeo Doubs take at this point. It's the same take as the offseason. Like he's playing on an offense headlined by Aaron Rodgers. If he can ever earn his trust, then he's going to be good in fantasy. The problem is he has not yet earned his trust. And even in a game, like I know Doubs had like a good game this week, right? But I feel like anyone watching that was like, yeah, but Lazard was out and Cobb was out, and Christian Watson left immediately, and Sammy Watkins had no role in the offense. And you start listing off those things, and you're like, shouldn't Doubs have had like a 35-40% target share in this game? Like he had a 23% target share, which was fine, but like you'd expect it to be higher. Like it was Sammy Watkins, Amari Rodgers, who we know is a bust, and Samori Toure, like. Come on. Like, he's got to get more targets than that. And it's like once Cobb is back, Rodgers' best friend, and then Lazard is back, and when Watson doesn't have a concussion, it's like all these guys come back. It's fine. Again, he needs to earn Rodgers' trust, and he just hasn't done that yet. So good ad and a good guy to roster for that upside, but we still can't rely on him just yet. And then Pierce, Palmer, I would say lower floor options. Each does come with their own level of upside. Pierce, it was a little bit weird. Like I was excited. So he annoyingly hurt our parlay 2 weeks ago, right? He plays like we thought he was going to come out, play more snaps, get those looks, and he felt like 15 yards shy of hitting on our parlay, which was annoying. But he played 97% of snaps. But I think this week it was like 57%. It was kind of weird. Like maybe I missed an injury or something like that. But he didn't play every snap. It could have been different formations given the new quarterback. But he's a good, talented rookie. Maybe second half of the season he can break out more. And he's also a rookie that has like a downfield role, and we know Eilinger is gonna throw more downfield than Matt Ryan did. He really liked to do that in college. Like he did that this week. Like he's gonna throw downfield, and Pierce is their downfield option. So I like Pierce long term, and I think he could have a good second half of the season. But you can understand that even this one, like, it's Alec Pierce. It's the Colts offense. He's still like the number 2/3. Like, we're not going out of our way to be targeting this like passing attack when we've got, a young quarterback who we know is like, he's looked good, but we know his ceiling, and it's not, 300 yards every week. And then Palmer, it's the take Palmer always has. It's like he's not viable when they've got a healthy Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. But as soon as Keenan Allen returns, now we've got Mike Williams leaving for like a month with his injury. And Palmer more steps into that Mike Williams role. That Mike Williams role changes depending on the status of Keenan Allen. If Keenan Allen's back now, like Palmer's still not that good of a player. Like he's not that talented. And so you're going to get a ton of targets to Eckler and Keenan Allen. You're going to get targets to a general range of tight ends. Like obviously the Gerald Everett is the one, but like, they've got other guys that kind of give the ball to as well. They can use other running backs. And so it's like, if you need Palmer for 5 to 6 targets, sure. But again, more of a lower end option. After all of those players, I would say now you're going into pure Flyers, and then you're like quarterback and defense streaming options. No pure running back Flyers. I think all the Flyers are really just those handcuffs, those backups, those upside options we talked about before. But then I would look at for wide receiver if you really need to. Again, this is more competitive 12-team league and deeper 8, 12-team leagues. You do not need these options. But Terrace Marshall, Tyquan Thornton, Van Jefferson, and Nico Collins, that's like a list I would kind of look at if you're desperate there. And Marshall in particular, like he was someone that like the fantasy community was very hyped about last season. He wasn't like a high-end prospect, but like he played well in the preseason. We've liked his talent. He just couldn't put it together last year. Looks better, honestly, this year. Still not on a good team. We know PJ Walker is not the long-term answer. I know he's like been okay, but like let's be honest with ourselves. He's not an elite quarterback. But hey, trade deadline very soon. If DJ Moore got traded, his value goes up even higher. But even if DJ Moore doesn't get traded, like they were looking at Terrace Marshall every time they got close to the end zone. I don't know how many end zone targets he had, but from watching that game, I feel like it was like 3 or 4 end zone targets. He didn't come down with any of them. But if they're going to keep doing that for the rest of the season, if he's the clear number 2, and if they're going to, be trailing a little bit more than they have in like these last 2 weeks, like he has some level of upside. Like if you're in a competitive 12-team league, or if you're in especially 14, 16-team leams, Terrace Marshall should be rostered. If he's playing every snap on a team that's going to be trailing, he has some level of talent. He's going to be using the red zone. Like it just makes sense to have him, especially with the potential for DJ Moore to be leaving, but we'll know that very soon. After that, again, the whole list was just Flyers, Thornton, Van, Nico. There's really not a whole lot to say about them. None of them can be started right now. All of them have their own separate paths, but, none of them are like must rosters. I really thought Tyquan Thornton was going to be used a little bit more. He hasn't been used as much as I would have hoped. Again, this is like his 3rd or 4th game as a rookie, so like we're not expecting him to break out yet, but to close the season, maybe he does something there. Quarterback streaming options. I would hope at this point that you like have quarterback figured out. If you've got Dak, Russell Wilson, Daniel Jones normally, and they're on bye this week, and you need someone to stream, sure. But like you shouldn't be streaming quarterback every week at this point. Like you need to make a trade for quarterback if you're streaming right now. It's really gonna be difficult for you to take down teams that have like Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. Like these teams are gonna smoke you if you're trying to stream our streaming options this week, which are like Fields, Trevor Lawrence, and Marcus Mariota. Like you're just praying for 15 points if you're streaming, and you're going to get steamrolled by teams that have 30 at the quarterback position. But those are the top options. I would say the clear number 1 is Justin Fields. 88, 82, 60 rushing yards in the last 3 weeks. He's finally scrambling more. Just understand, he has one game this year over 190 passing yards. So you're not going to get a lot of points through the air. He's not throwing for very many touchdowns because they're not scoring very many, and they run the ball a lot when they get close. But if he can add 6 to 10 points, if he can get you to 15, get you through your bye week or an injury, he would be the top option. But understand that, like, the ceiling can only be so high if you're probably going to throw for around 170 passing yards and hopefully 1 touchdown. That's not very many fantasy points. Now you need 60 to 80 rushing yards, which is still a good amount to ask. After that, finally, defense streaming options. Hopefully, we've been talking about this for, 8 straight weeks. Like, hopefully you just have the Eagles or the Patriots at this point, and you can kind of just like use one of them regardless of the matchup. But if not, some good options this week. You've got Kansas City. This is probably the top option if we can get Malik Willis starting again. But Kansas City at home off their bye against the Titans again. If Malik Willis is starting, they are a phenomenal streaming option. But even if Tannehill's starting, they're a good option as well. Then the Seahawks after that. They're on the road, but it's against the Cardinals. It's a high sack potential spot. And even if the game's higher scoring is overall valued a little bit too highly by the fantasy community. Like, and you guys know when you're watching the games, like as soon as a team scores more than like 13 points, that whole like 14 to like 25 point range is fairly similar anyway. So even if you only give up 14 compared to a team that's giving up 25, 26 points, like the difference in points isn't that much. If the team giving up 25 or 26 has 5 or 6 sacks and a pick, that's way more valuable than the team that didn't let up like many points, but also didn't really convert any sacks or turnovers and stuff like that. And then when you combine, like, if you're getting a lot of sacks, that just increases the rate of like strip fumbles for touchdowns, which is really what gets fantasy scoring going. So Seahawks good there. And then a similar case for the Rams. Weirdly, so they're on the road against the Bucks. The Bucks have a terrible offensive line, but they're not allowing that many sacks. That could be randomness. It could also just be Brady throwing the ball away a ton. But we all know the Bucks have struggled, right? And the Rams could, really get going on defense in this spot. They do have a lot of upside. Just don't be shocked if they don't get a ton of sacks because, again, it's weird, but the Bucks haven't allowed that many sacks. So those are the top waiver wire options this week. Again, anything that happens in the Monday night game will be reflected in the table on my website. Rest season rankings and week 9 rankings will be up tomorrow afternoon, maybe around that like 3 to 5 o'clock range Eastern. I'll be back Wednesday to go over the top trade targets. Thursday, running back start sits. Friday's wide receiver start sits. That, my friends, is in this one. Hope you all enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button? How about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.